There's a courtroom where fiction blurs with reality, and the echoes of broken promises thunder louder than the gavel itself. This is the story of a marriage that looked perfect on the outside, but behind closed doors, it was unraveling piece by piece. Welcome to the Verdict Diaries, where real emotions, complex relationships, and powerful courtroom moments come alive through captivating storytelling. If you find truth in fiction and want to dive deeper into stories that mirror real life, subscribe now and hit that bell icon. We bring you powerful stories like this one every day. Now, let's begin. It all started with what looked like a dream. Emily and Jonathan West were New York's elite power couple. He was a renowned novelist. She was a top criminal defense attorney. They graced magazine covers, gave TED Talks, and were constantly photographed at high-profile charity events. On paper, they were unstoppable. But behind their public smiles lay years of resentment, unspoken trauma, and a partnership that slowly crumbled under the pressure of perfection. Emily had once told a close friend, "People envy us, but I wake up every day wondering who this man beside me has become." Those words were never meant for the public, but in this fictional courtroom tale that feels painfully real, they would become part of the trial that shocked the nation. Their divorce proceedings began quietly. No media coverage, no press releases, just two powerful people trying to untangle their lives. But everything changed the day Jonathan filed a surprise motion. Full custody of their twin daughters, claiming Emily was emotionally unfit to parent. The court exploded with interest. How could a mother, an accomplished, composed, and intelligent woman, be suddenly deemed unfit? Was it retaliation? Or was there something darker Emily was hiding? Their courtroom drama turned into a televised spectacle after Jonathan's legal team petitioned to unseal certain documents for public interest. The judge approved, citing legal precedent on public right to know, given both parties influence and celebrity status. With cameras rolling and the public watching, secrets began to surface. Jonathan's lawyer started with journal entries, Emily's private thoughts from over a decade ago. Pages filled with self-doubt, exhaustion, moments of emotional spirals postpartum. They painted a picture of a woman unraveling. But Emily's team countered immediately. "These are not evidence of instability," said her attorney, fire in her voice. "They are the raw reflections of motherhood, pressure, and pain. Would any of us want our worst days televised?" But the prosecution wasn't done. They introduced video footage of arguments, Emily yelling, Jonathan staying calm. The narrative was being drawn. He was the composed parent. She was reactive, emotional. Yet in this fictional courtroom, the audience began to see something deeper, something too familiar, too close to real life. Emily's legal team fought back hard. They presented texts, emails, and therapy notes revealing years of gaslighting and emotional manipulation. Jonathan, behind closed doors, wasn't the picture-perfect husband he pretended to be. He'd used Emily's vulnerabilities against her, recording private moments to construct a narrative that made her look unstable. One text from Jonathan to his friend read, "She's going to crack soon. I'm saving everything for the custody battle. It'll be easy." The courtroom was stunned. The judge demanded context, and the friend who received the message was called to the stand. Under oath, he admitted, "Yeah, he said that. He was planning this for years." Emily, who had held herself together all this time, broke into tears, not because she was losing a battle, but because someone had finally said the truth out loud. Public opinion began to shift. Viewers flooded social media. "This isn't just a divorce. This is emotional warfare. How many women live this story, and no one believes them? Despite being fictional, this story was striking chords in homes across the country. Therapists, family lawyers, and advocates started using it as a teaching tool, saying, "This might be scripted, but these dynamics, they're as real as it gets." As the trial continued, Emily shared her side in a powerful statement to the court. No script, no legal jargon, just a mother and a woman finally reclaiming her voice. "I've made mistakes. I've shouted. I've cried. I've doubted myself. But none of that makes me unfit. It makes me human. He chose to weaponize my honesty. I chose to survive." Her words trended for days, but the story was far from over. The next phase of the trial would unravel deeper secrets, including a hidden clause in their marriage agreement and a private investigator with shocking footage. And just when everyone thought they knew where this case was headed, it took a twist no one expected. 2. The courtroom hushed as the judge called for recess, but the air remained thick with tension. Emily sat in silence, her lawyer whispering strategy. Across the room, Jonathan maintained his practiced calm. Cameras captured every flicker of emotion, every glance exchanged. After the break, the proceedings resumed, and this time, the focus shifted to finances, specifically a secret marital agreement signed just days before their wedding. The courtroom projector displayed the document, a creative rights clause drafted by Jonathan's team. It stated that any stories, characters, or written works based on their personal lives would be considered joint intellectual property, an odd clause that made everyone wonder why Emily had ever agreed to it. But then, Emily took the stand. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed years of exhaustion. "I didn't fully understand it. I trusted him. I thought it was just about book royalties," she said. "I never imagined he would use it to silence me." As it turned out, after their separation, Emily had begun writing a memoir, not to shame Jonathan, but to tell her truth. When Jonathan caught wind of it, he filed an injunction claiming she was violating the clause and threatening their daughter's privacy. But evidence soon showed Jonathan had been secretly pitching a novel to multiple publishers, a fiction loosely based on their marriage, with Emily portrayed as unstable and manipulative. He had weaponized the very clause he used to block Emily's voice. The hypocrisy shocked the courtroom. Then came the private investigator. Emily's legal team introduced footage, video clips collected over the past year. These weren't just arguments. They were moments when Jonathan deliberately provoked her, then recorded her reactions. In one clip, he accused her of being a neglectful mother. She yelled, pushed a plate off the table in frustration. In another, he coldly told her she was lucky anyone stayed married to her this long. Jonathan's lawyer objected, citing invasion of privacy, but the judge allowed it, noting the recordings were made inside Emily's home without her consent. Suddenly, the narrative began to shift dramatically. Jonathan was no longer the calm, rational parent. He was strategic, calculated, and increasingly sinister in the public's eyes, and the public was watching closely. TikTok clips from the trial went viral. Hashtags like #Justice for Emily and #Divorce Gaslight flooded social platforms. People shared their own stories in comments. "This happened to my sister," or "I lived through this too." Even fictionalized, the story struck a nerve. The judge issued a gag order for the remainder of the trial, trying to stop the firestorm from interfering with legal proceedings. But it was too late. The world had already chosen a side. Then came a particularly painful testimony. Their daughter, Lily, only 14, was called to provide insight into her home life. She had the option to give a written statement, but she chose to speak. "I love both my parents," she said quietly, "but I always felt like I had to protect my mom. Dad would say things to her, and she'd pretend it didn't hurt, but I knew it did." She paused. "I don't want to live with just one of them. I want them both. But if I had to choose, I'd want to be with the one who tells the truth." There was not a dry eye in the courtroom. Even the judge looked shaken. Emily broke down for the first time. She hadn't expected Lily to speak. She had insisted her children be kept out of it. But Lily insisted harder. In that moment, fiction felt more real than reality. The judge called for another recess. Emily and Lily hugged in the hallway, away from cameras. Jonathan sat alone, staring into space. Back in session, the final nail came in the form of a deposition from Jonathan's editor. She revealed that Jonathan's upcoming book was being marketed as loosely inspired by his emotionally unstable ex-wife. The editor admitted they had discussed using court drama as a marketing angle. The room gasped. Now it wasn't just a custody battle. It wasn't just a divorce. It was defamation. It was manipulation. And it was all being done in the name of fiction. Emily's lawyer asked, "If this was fiction, why is he pitching it with real courtroom documents?" No one answered. Public opinion surged harder. Feminist groups, legal rights activists, and family law specialists began referencing the case in media. Talk shows dissected it. Podcasts broke it down daily. Despite being fictional, this was now a cultural phenomenon. And in the midst of it all, the atmosphere in the courtroom was no longer just tense. It was electric. The leaked audio of Jonathan's phone call had shifted everything. "She's the story. I'm the author." Those 8 words reverberated not only through the courtroom, but across the country. The leak had gone viral overnight, racking up millions of views and igniting a firestorm of online debates. The court had no choice but to acknowledge the public's reaction. When the session resumed, the judge's expression was stern. "While leaks to the media are not condoned," he said, "the content of the audio raises significant ethical and legal concerns relevant to this case." Jonathan's legal team scrambled, arguing that the clip was taken out of context. They claimed Jonathan was merely discussing creative ownership, not intent to manipulate reality. But the judge wasn't buying it, nor was the public. Outside the courthouse, protesters gathered, holding signs that read, "Truth isn't fiction, and women deserve their voices." What started as a divorce trial had transformed into a broader conversation about emotional abuse, media exploitation, and control over one's narrative. Inside, Emily was composed. She had learned long ago how to mask the whirlwind of emotions inside her. But this time, she didn't feel like she had to. The world had finally seen the truth. As the court prepared for closing arguments, both legal teams made their final moves. Jonathan's lawyer focused on damage control. Yes, Mr. Hartman may have used poor judgment in speaking to a publisher during the trial, but he has every right to his creative process. This is not a case about villainy. It's about a couple whose marriage fell apart, as so many do. Then Emily's lawyer rose. "This is not just about divorce. This is about power, about a man who sought to control a woman's story, first in marriage, then in court, and finally through fiction. We are not here to silence creativity. We are here to protect truth." She paused. Emily did not ask for this fight, but once it began, she chose to fight with integrity. She chose to protect her children. And she chose to stand in the light while her life was being twisted into someone else's plotline. When the arguments concluded, the courtroom fell into a reflective silence. Everyone understood this was more than a verdict. It was a cultural moment. The judge announced he would issue his decision the following morning. The courtroom emptied slowly. Outside, Emily was greeted not by cameras flashing in her face, but by women clapping softly, tearfully, strangers who saw themselves in her pain. That night, Emily sat alone, staring at the manuscript of her memoir. It was raw, unpolished, and unfinished, but it was hers. Every word came from truth, not revenge, and for the first time in a long while, she felt proud of her voice. The next morning, the court was packed again. Reporters, activists, students, lawyers from across the country. The judge appeared with a thick file in hand and began reading the verdict. In reviewing this case, the court has examined not only the legal matters surrounding divorce and custody, but also the broader implications of consent, control, and narrative manipulation. He continued. The court finds that the marital clause regarding creative rights was misrepresented to the plaintiff, and its enforcement constituted an act of coercion. Furthermore, the defendant's use of private marital events for profit, under the guise of fiction, represents a form of emotional abuse and reputational harm. Emily's breath caught. The judge looked directly at Jonathan. While this court does not govern the literary world, it does govern the protection of personal dignity. Therefore, this court grants full custodial rights to the plaintiff, Ms. Emily Shaw, with supervised visitation for Mr. Hartman until further evaluation. Jonathan's mouth fell open. Furthermore, the plaintiff is granted the full legal right to tell her story in any form she chooses, including memoir, interview, or public speaking, without restriction or interference from the defendant. Emily gasped, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. The courtroom erupted. Not in cheers, this wasn't a movie, but in a palpable shift of energy. People exhaled. Some wiped away tears. A few even stood up, as if to acknowledge a hard-earned justice. The judge banged his gavel. This case is closed. Outside, the media waited for sound bites, but Emily walked past them. She didn't need to explain. The world had seen what she went through, and more importantly, what she overcame. That evening, news channels covered the verdict extensively. Think pieces popped up overnight. Experts praised the ruling as a step forward for narrative ethics, while others debated whether courts should intervene in creative works. But the public sentiment was overwhelmingly in Emily's favor. Social media flooded with messages like, "I finally feel seen," and "Her story is my story." Emily didn't return to her old life. She built a new one. She published her memoir, titled Fictional Wife, Real Wounds. It debuted at #1 on bestseller lists. But more than that, it sparked a national conversation. Book clubs, universities, and legal panels used it as a case study. Emily was invited on major talk shows, not for scandal, but for advocacy. She also launched a foundation, Right to Heal, offering legal and emotional support to women silenced by contracts, NDAs, and manipulative relationships. The foundation helped survivors regain their narratives and offered pro bono legal advice for those who couldn't afford to fight back. Jonathan, he released his book too, but it was met with harsh reviews and public backlash. Critics labeled it exploitative and lacking authenticity. His publishers dropped him, and his reputation in the literary world faded. The irony? The very control he fought for ended up destroying the story he wanted to tell. In contrast, Emily's truth became a movement, not because she wanted fame, but because she chose to speak. As she said during her first televised interview, "We can't always stop people from writing about us, but we can choose whether to stay silent or tell our own story." And now, her story echoed far beyond the courtroom. Thank you for following this powerful journey. If you believe in truth, justice, and the courage it takes to stand alone in the face of manipulation, make sure you subscribe to the Verdict Diaries. Every day, we bring you true tales and fictional reflections rooted in the very real battles people fight for their dignity, their voice, and their truth. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware, and never stop speaking your truth.